It has been 74 years since the 18th of September 1949 when some of the brightest minds in the country had debated at length whether the country must be called India, Bharat or something else altogether. But over 7 decades later, the debate in India still continues. The demand for setting up a Constituent Assembly to draft the Constitution of independent India was one of the key demands during the Indian freedom struggle. When a cabinet mission came to India in 1946 to discuss the transfer of power from the British government to the Indians, the Constituent Assembly was first created. On 9th of December 1946, the Constituent Assembly sat for the first time. In the 2 years and 11 months that followed, the Assembly completed its task of framing the Indian Constitution after 11 total sessions comprising of 166 days of intense debates and discussions. Even though the Assembly first got together in December 1946, it wasn't until the 18th of September 1949 that the Assembly was able to finalize on a name for the country. This is a story of what happened when the Constituent Assembly of India met in the Constitution Hall of New Delhi on the morning of the 18th of September 1949, just 2 months before the Constituent Assembly of Independent India adopted the Constitution and 4 months before it came into force. A substantial portion of deliberations of the Constituent Assembly was on the draft Constitution prepared by the Drafting Committee. Members of the Assembly proposed amendments to the draft Constitution, and these were debated at length. At the end of a debate around an article of the draft Constitution, the Constituent Assembly either adopted or rejected the amendment. The decisions were taken by voting through a majority. Our story starts on the 17th of September 1949, one day before Article 1 in its current form was adopted. Over the past 19 months, the Assembly had met, discussed and debated many parts of the draft Constitution, but an important part was still pending, Article 1. Dr. Ambedkar had understood that it would be a tricky one to get decided. Only half an hour was left for the business to conclude, and Dr. Ambedkar wanted Article 1 to be adopted on the same day. But some of the delegates were insistent on having a long debate before voting can take place. Dr. Ambedkar had suggested starting Article 1 with India, that is Bharat. But the members wanted to put their objections on the record. The members ultimately got their way, and they were told that on the next day, that is the 18th of September 1949, they will be given enough time to speak before the amendments are put to a final vote. When the Assembly met at 9 a.m. on the 18th of September 1949, the first to speak was H.V. Kamath from Central Province and Berar. Kamath said that this was the Namkaran ceremony of the newborn Indian Republic. The alternate names suggested at this point were Bharat, Hindustan, Hind, Matrubhumi or Bharatvarsh. Some say, why name the baby at all? India will suffice, Kamath said. Well and good. If there was no need for a Namkaran ceremony, we could have continued India. But if we grant this point, then there must be a new name to this baby. Then, of course, the question arises as to what the name should be given. As Kamath began to delve into the origin of the name Bharat, tracing it back to Bharat, son of Dushyant and Shakuntala during the Vedic era, an already impatient Dr. Ambedkar interrupted. Is it necessary to trace all this? Dr. Ambedkar asked. I do not understand the purpose of it. I'm very sorry, but there ought to be some sense of proportion in view of the limited time before the House, he remarked. But Kamath persisted. I feel that the expression India is Bharat, I suppose that means India is to say Bharat, in a constitution is somewhat clumsy, is what Kamath said. It would be much better if this expression, this construction were modified in a constitutionally more acceptable form, and may I say in a more aesthetic form and definitely in a more correct form, Kamath told the House. He called it a constitutional slip, stating that Dr. Ambedkar had admitted many times of constitutional slips in the past and that he hopes that Dr. Ambedkar will also admit to this one and revise the construction of the clause under Article 1. Kamath was followed by Brajeshwar Prasad from Bihar. Interestingly, Prasad didn't seem to have a problem with either India or Bharat. His demand was that there should be no separate reference for states and union. He proposed that Article 1 should state India, that is Bharat, is one integral unit. Next came Maulana Hasrat Mohani, representing the United Provinces. Mohani was a founding member of the Communist Party of India, an Urdu poet who was credited with coining the legendary slogan Inqilab Zindabad. Unhappy with Nehru and Ambedkar, Mohani told the House, "This is not only about a name, it says here that India shall be a union of states. Why only states? Why not a union of republics?" Mohani continued to lash out at both Nehru and Ambedkar, stating, "I know that Dr. Ambedkar has made up his mind and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru has also made up his mind. He has changed his whole attitude and career. I know that he has got an overwhelming majority on his side." Mohani wanted the states in India should be fully autonomous. After Maulana concluded calling the proposed system Indian imperialism, Seth Govind Das of the Indian National Congress got up for his turn. The atmosphere that was necessary in the House for naming of the country has been disturbed by the speeches so far delivered. Das began. Quoting Vedas, Purans, even Hyun sang, Seth reminded the House that Bharat Mata Ki Jai was a slogan coined under the leadership of none other than Mahatma Gandhi. I am very much pleased to note that whatever manner it may be, the name Bharat is being given to the country. I heartily congratulate the Constituent Assembly on it, Seth Govind Das said. Next speaker, Kallur Subbarao, representing Indian National Congress from the Madras constituency, also supported Bharat. He further proposed that Hindi should be renamed as Bharati. B.M. Gupte from Bombay welcomed the word Bharat, but stated that he was concerned about the use of the word state for unit. State and union of states, he said, connotes something which might lead them to think that they are independent. Tersely, Dr. Ambedkar responded, "The whole of the article, including the term union, was debated at great length. We are now merely discussing whether the word Bharat should come before or after India. The rest of the substantive part of the article has been debated at great length already." Kamlapati Tripathi, a senior leader of the Indian Congress representing the United Provinces, at this stage suggested that instead of India, that is Bharat, it should be changed to Bharat, that is India. When a country is in bondage, it loses its soul. During its slavery for 1,000 years, our country too lost its everything. We lost our culture, our history, we lost our prestige and our humanity, we lost our self-respect, said Tripathi. Today, after remaining in bondage for 1,000 years, this free country will regain its name. And we do hope that after regaining its lost name, it will regain its inner consciousness and external form, he continued. As he continued his fairly long speech that related Bharat with Shankaracharya, Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, Dr. Ambedkar again cut in, suggesting that there is limited time and lots of work to be done. The last person to speak was Hargovind Pant, a journalist and a lawyer who wanted the name of the country to be Bharatvarsh and nothing else. The amendments were put to vote before the House. The first amendment, proposing India shall be a union of Indian Socialistic Republics to be called UISR on the lines of USSR, was rejected, as were the proposals for India or Bharat to be called USSI or USSP. The third amendment, the one by Kamath, stating Bharat or in the English language India shall be a union of states, was put to vote, getting 38 ayes and 51 noes. Without a majority, Kamath's amendment did not make it to the Constitution. It was then that the amendment moved by Dr. Ambedkar, seeking to start Article 1 with India, that is Bharat, was finally adopted. Although in 1949 the debate ended with those who wanted Bharat to be included in the Constitution as generally happy with its inclusion, but in 2023, ahead of the crucial G20 summit in India, things seem to have gone back to square one. Only this time, there is no B.R. Ambedkar to settle the debate.